What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. I'm Bob Wankel. Anthony Sanfilippo is here. Anthony, how about the Philadelphia Phillies? A horrible, no good, lousy, rotten game on Friday night. Maybe their worst game of the season, or at least one of them. And then they bounce back with a doubleheader sweep, a rare doubleheader sweep of the San Diego Padres on Saturday. And another comeback win in the finale on Sunday. They beat the Padres 3 out of 4 games. Tons of heroes, tons of really good moments. And I'm going to do something that I never do. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at UpPhillies, at AnSanPhilly. And actually, I changed my Twitter handle. Scandalous this week. I'm actually Bob_Wankel. I got rid of the CB. I'm disassociating with Crossing Broad. No, that's not true. I was actually down there covering the game yesterday for Crossing Broad, and you can read the story on the website today. But yeah, I wanted to switch it up a little bit, have some different professional things going on here, and I wanted to kind of create a handle that was more eclectic, more far-reaching.
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, we bring you in, and I want to get your reaction about what you observed because you were down there all day Saturday. So
Yes, I was.
Obviously, I think you're probably trending in a positive direction with this team right now.
Yeah, and you know what the thing is, Bob. It's fascinating because I don't want to start off sounding like I'm going to turn a positive into a negative because it's not. But the Phillies, they're able to do something that I don't see pro sports teams do, and that's look terrible and look fantastic in the same game with regularity. Like they start off bad, and then they find that they just know how at some point to say, okay, now it's time to play. Now it's time to win, and then they just do it. And both games Saturday they were losing middle of the game, and then yesterday they were losing a couple times middle of the game, and then even in extra innings, and then we're just like, yeah, no problem, we got this, and they find a way to do it, and so that's why. That's why when I watch this team, I look at them and say, aside from the Braves, who in baseball has this moxie? And I don't see it with any other team. Really don't see it with any other team. And I said, it's a thing that you should really be excited about as a fan, and it's going to frustrate you at times, but it's also you're never out of a game. You're always going to have a shot to win a game. And you got red light players. And what I mean by that is guys who, when the red light of the camera goes on in the big spots, they come up in the big spots and they perform. I look at Kyle Schwarber to start off with, Bob, and I think he's a good place to start. I know Harper gets the hit off a hater yesterday, right? That's great. But Kyle Schwarber's been having an absolutely dreadful season at the plate. Yeah, he had the home runs, but aside from that, I mean, he's 188 or whatever the hell his average has been. He's not been what you expect as a leadoff hitter. And then he comes into this series, and it's one big hit after another. Game-tying home run, go-ahead single, another home run, another big hit yesterday, another home run yesterday, 3 games in a row, and then the walk-off sac fly when you need him to just make contact. Like, the things that you expect a leader to do, all of a sudden, in the midst of a terrible season, he's able to do it, no problem. And I think it just emanates down, and that this kind of experience matters, that they just know that they can do it. And it's unreal. I don't see it anywhere else in sports like this, but this team has that innate ability to just do it. And that's why you're never out of a game with the Phillies.
There was a point in the first game on Saturday afternoon, probably the bottom of the 5th inning. Blake Snell's just ripping through the lineup.
Yeah.
They were horrible on Friday night. And I'm saying to myself, here we go. This is what we're going to do this weekend. We're going to let the San Diego Padres back into the wild card race. You're going to take a lot of that goodwill that you generated through the month of June and the early part of July, and you're basically just going to light that on fire. And then you wait. And I think one of the things that we have to do is sort of, and I guess this applies to a lot of sports, a lot of teams. It's not over until it's over, right? We know that old saying. But there's this thing with the Phillies where you almost your eyes betray you when you watch the Phillies because you look at them and you say, here we go. They're laying down. There's no juice for this. How are they letting this happen again? And you want to criticize everything they do until they get it done. And then you almost want to just say, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to let it ride out to the final out. I'm not going to have any takes. Like, you know, you and I and people like us, like we have to give takes during a game sometimes. How many times can you, I think we're fairly measured, but how many times can you think you know something when you watch this team play and then 20 minutes later, you're like, I'm an idiot. You know, I'm wrong. I forget what I just watched for the last 14 hours because something just happened in the last 6 minutes that flipped it on its head.
Yeah.
And that's really what you're seeing. And that is the vibe right now. They get down early yesterday even. And this is when you know things are going well. They're down 3-0. They're not hitting. And you're like, they're going to split. They might split. But yesterday I kind of felt like in the middle of that game, they're going to get to this guy. Like they're going to get back into this game. And they did. And like, that's where they're at right now. A 3-run deficit's nothing. I mean, they trailed in every single game of this series and in the final 3, it didn't matter. And it kind of, I want to get back to something we started talking about on Friday. So urgency, I think it's a word that we used on the show. I did a hit with Kevin Cooney yesterday on 97.5 before the game. And he brought up the idea of, you know, they went to Christopher Sanchez to start this series. Some of the lineup decisions with the extra rest built in. Does this team, like the urgency question is something that we've talked a lot about, whether it's how they began the season, how they build in the extra rest. I'm at the point where I think I'm willing to start to give the Phillies the benefit of the doubt because like we looked at this and we said, Sanchez out of the All-Star break, huh? Like no Aaron Nola in this first series. And then you look at that game 1 lineup with the Drew Ellis's of the world and Stott's not hitting against Snell, even though he's hitting over 300 against left-handed pitching. And people see the lineup and they're going crazy. They're like, I can't believe this. But then Stott comes in late in the game, contributes to a comeback win, 2 hits in the nightcap. Bryce Harper doesn't play against Snell in the first game. I know he didn't exactly square one up late in game 1 on Saturday, but hustles down the line, beats a throw. He's right in the middle of the comeback. Hits his first home run in 51 days Saturday night. 2 more hits yesterday. I don't know, man. Like, Zach Wheeler gets the extra rest. He had a 6.61 ERA in his 3 previous starts. He was really good yesterday. Pitches through 7 innings, 3 earned, only allowed 5 total base runners. Now you got Aaron Nola starting game 1, and maybe you give him the reset that he needed. I don't know. They're 26-12 since June 1. There's a reasonable path that this team ends up with the second best record in the National League when it's all said and done. Like, that's not insane to think at this point.
No, it's not.
At what point? Because I feel it. I get fans. Like, I understand. Like, Drew Ellis. Are we seriously fucking doing Drew Ellis here? but then they win 3 out of 4, and you're like, you can't. Sometimes it's like you just can't argue with results, and they're getting them right now.
Yeah, they do. They find a way, Bob. And again, it's a unique way because I don't think that this kind of thing would happen with any other team in baseball, even in 2023. Like, I don't want to sit there and say, oh, well, this is the new school mentality, and we think a little bit more, you know, the way baseball has always been done, and the Phillies do it differently. And I don't think that this kind of setup works with other teams. I think this is a very unique situation with this Phillies team. But I will say this. I think the most important portion of this 4-game series is maybe something that's going to get lost in time. But I think I want to just highlight it here so that we have it, you know, for posterity's sake. The 9th inning on Friday night was the most important part of this series. Yes, they lose the game 8-3, but they forced San Diego to throw Josh Hader in that game. They had they rallied a little bit in the 9th inning. They had the tying run on deck, right? I mean, so they put San Diego in a position that they had to put Hader in. Well, Hader wasn't going to pitch on Saturday. And I think that you were able to get the rest of the Padres bullpen, frankly, stinks. Really, when you're throwing Nick Martinez 3 days in a row, what does that tell you about your bullpen, right?
I know.
So I believe that was the victory that created the series victory by doing that. It's like I said, lost in time, because it's just a one inning of a 5-run loss. But the fact that they got him into that game changed the Padres' dynamic over the course of the next 3 games in 24 hours. We're a little bit longer than that because of the rain delay, but and I think that's what really helped the Phillies be able to pull out this series. Because let's be fair, Bob, they could have lost all 4 games, right? I mean, the way they played,
Sure.
they could have lost all 4 games and end up winning 3 out of 4. And I think that changed the dynamic of the series. And yeah, yesterday, of course, for the first 5 innings, Seth Lugo was pitching like Greg Maddux, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, we're facing Seth Lugo. Oh, okay, all right, now we're good now. But I think that's a little moment I wanted to add in there. That I think that was kind of a crucial thing that kind of switched the way things would go in this series.
Can I tell you what I thought the most important thing I saw all weekend was? Bryce Harper, 6 for 13.
Yeah.
2 doubles, a home run, pair of walks, 3 runs batted in. And don't overlook the fact that he had a moment on Sunday. Like we've talked a lot about his numbers, and hey, kudos to him for keeping things together. And he's had some important hits, but there's been some fluff here too, right? Mm-hmm. For him to get that hit against Hader, because it looks like the Phillies pissed away that game yesterday in the 9th inning. Like there's a runner on third, 2 outs. It looks like they missed their opportunity more or less. Hader blows the doors off of Schwarber. They don't move the runner to third with less than 2 outs. Turner moves them along, but who cares at that point? And then Harper stays middle, gets the base hit, ties the game. And it was pointed out to me by I guess someone that knows some things. And they said, don't overlook the importance of Bryce Harper being the player that delivered that hit.
Yeah.
That not just that they tied the game, and not that they just went on to win the game, but it was that Bryce Harper did it. And it's interesting that this point was made to me, because I think it circles back to something that we've talked about a couple times on this show. Bryce Harper's visible frustration.
Yeah.
And here he is. You saw, like, I felt like I was watching a different player, a relaxed player yesterday, one that we haven't seen a ton of this season. Like, did you see where Harper gets the double, right? And Turner goes first to third.
He's chastising Turner.
And he's talking with him about being 30 and saying, like, you didn't score on that, man.
Yeah.
Like, and he's having fun. And then that's before he delivers this game tying hit in the 9th. I think there's something to be said for your best players being the guys that deliver. It's great when the Bryson Stotts and the Alec Boehms, like, you need those secondary guys to be contributors. There's no question about it. But when your best dudes are the ones that are delivering in those key moments, I think that can, and as it was told to me from a former player, that has a different ability to elevate what you do moving forward.
I think you're spot on with this, Bob, because he was the one guy, even during the stretch from the beginning of June when they were playing as great baseball as they were playing, that you just didn't feel like he felt as if he was really part of it. I mean, of course, like we said, he was contributing, he was getting on base, he was finding small ways to help, but he wasn't Bryce Harper. He wasn't the guy, which is who he's supposed to be with the Phillies. This weekend, he was the guy. I mean, him and Schwarber. I mean, both of them. That they did what they were supposed to do. And yes, I think that you get an engaged Bryce Harper. You get a Harper who's bought into everything that the team's doing and playing the way he wants to play, and he's not throwing his helmet and in disgust or walking down the tunnel and missing 3 innings because he's so mad at himself, dwelling on one at bat. You get that guy, sky's the limit. And I put a tweet out about it on Saturday. Like, when this offense does these things where they go hit, I mean, you just passing the bat, they're unstoppable. They really are. It could be what we all thought it was going to be. One of the best lineups in the sport. Because then you got guys like you're mentioning, your Stotts and your Boehms and Brandon Marsh, who had a hell of a game yesterday, by the way. Those guys, if they're your bottom of the lineup, right? So you got guys who have been contributing all year, maybe not as a superstar level, but at a pretty good level at 6 through 9, because 1 through 5 is superstars. Like, how do you pitch this team? How do you beat the Phillies? I'm really high on this team And maybe Bob right now, and I picked them to win 90 games. I said that think that they're the second best team in the National League, and I still think that. But I'm probably more confident today about this Phillies team than I even was a month ago or at the beginning of the season. Like, there's just something about them that they have an it factor, and you feel it, the vibe in that locker room, and there's just, I don't know. I'm going to be that guy who's telling everybody, just wait for the end of the season. Like, this team's poised yet again.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it's hard not to feel good about where they're at right now. Although ironically, they win 3 out of 4 this weekend, and they still have not actually gotten back into a spot where they hold a playoff position right now. It's amazing, isn't it? Like, they went through that June surge, they didn't get into playoff position, then they finally do, and they cool down a little bit, and then that's when they get over the hump. And then they get hot again this weekend, and they still can't. It's just been so weird watching them try to press up against this. But what they've also done in the process is, although they don't hold one of those wild card spots right now, the gap between the top spot and being on the outside looking in is it's gone. I mean, that spread is evaporated essentially. You look right now, San Francisco holds the top spot, 11 games over 500. Phillies 9 games over 500. So I mean, they're a game out of being the top spot in the wild card at this point, and that race is getting tight. And it was a tough weekend for the Miami Marlins. And I think again, it just kind of goes back to, like, we can't have that NFL mentality when you assess this stuff, because you leave Miami last weekend and you go, see, you missed a golden opportunity to shrink the lead there. Why can't you beat this Marlins team? This is concerning. Is this a red flag? What does this mean moving forward? And then, Miami comes out and they get their brains beaten in by the Orioles, and the Phillies pick up 2.5 games this weekend. So,
yeah, and I think, Bob, and we've discussed this. We don't have to go over it again. I mean, we talked about how difficult the Marlins and the Giants schedules are in August. It's going to be interesting to see if they maintain where they are in the standings at the moment. And Arizona, I think we're fine. The pitching staff that they don't have is finally catching up to them. Just
Arizona 2-8 in their last 10. And did you see who they have this week?
Yeah, I know. It's a mess. I mean, they're so to me right now, it's a 5-team race for 3 wild card spots at the current moment. Yeah. So it'd be the Giants, the Marlins, and the Diamondbacks who are in those spots. The Phillies, and then whoever's the second place team currently right now, the Reds, whoever's the second place team in the Central. And the Reds have some issues right now with pitching themselves.
Was that a sobering weekend for the Cincinnati Reds? Was that like a comeback to earth moment, or is that just a temporary blip on the?
Well, I think so. I think they're still going to be I think they're going to be a competitive team. I think they're going to be in this race. But I'll tell you, the team we just saw the Phillies beat, they're not dead. They didn't bury the Padres. The Padres are, yes, they're 8 games out of the wild card. I think are 7.5 out of the last wild card spot. But the Padres are a team. If they can add a couple of bullpen arms and maybe one more bat to their lineup, they can make up this ground against.
You think that they add at this point? Like, they have to do something over the next 2 weeks, though, right? Like, they have to make a move back to being within 5 games. I know they're probably looking at teams like the Giants, feeling like we can get them, we can bridge that gap. We don't trust the Marlins, especially with their schedule. You see what's happening to Arizona. There's probably some feeling like we can get back into this. But man, that was a brutal loss yesterday. If they would have gotten out of Philadelphia with a series split, I think you'd feel a lot better about the Padres right now. But it felt like, man, this is an opportunity to win a game. They had that game won. They couldn't do it with their best reliever on the mound, lefty. And that's a tough series to lose. And I do wonder if they're like 2 more weeks away from spinning their wheels, where they just say, you know what? We're so expensive. We can't do it. We've got to strip this down and try again next year. I wonder.
Yeah, you can maybe think that way. And, their schedule is not getting any easier. I mean, they're still on the road, right? They got to go to Toronto, who's been playing better, and then Detroit, who's really been playing better. I mean, you want to talk about a team that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. The Tigers are back in the AL Central race, which is, I know it's a shitty division, but I mean, they've been playing really good baseball of late. So to be honest, the Padres' schedule is not easy. But I just think you just see some of those guys who maybe got off to slower starts are starting to play some good ball. Machado had a good weekend. You could see what Bogarts has been coming around slowly but surely over the course of time. freaking Trent Grisham killed the Phillies. I mean, this weekend, absolutely killed the Phillies with at the plate. And so, if he starts hitting a little bit more, and then you got, Tatis, who's been having a great year for them, and Soto, who's got an OPS over 900. So, like, that lineup is just too good to me to be dead at this point. I think that there's still a path back for them. And in the end, it would not. But the whole genesis of what I started this mentioning these other teams for was of the what you look at as a 5-team race currently, the Phillies are the best team of those 5 teams. And it's not even, in my head, it's not close. And I think that they will separate themselves from the other 4 over the course of the next month. Okay. The question then becomes what happens behind them. And I think that if there's anybody below that 5 group who can sneak into it, it's the Padres. I don't think the Mets are a half game behind the Padres. It's not happening for them. But I do think there's a difference. I think the Padres are a team that has the talent and it has been coming a little bit better for the last few weeks, whereas the Mets are just not there. And I don't think the Cubs are going to sell. So I don't think the Cubs are part of it either. They're the 3 teams that are the next tier down.
So there are a lot of good things to talk about, and there's almost these little random bullet points I would want to hit on, and it's not worth diving into it with a ton of depth here, but hey, Bryson Stott, good weekend, man. It just continues to impress. So solid, steady, lefty, righty. He just finds ways. He grinds through at bats. It's really been impressive to watch, and I don't want to overlook that. I just don't know where to even slide it into this show, but it's not all good. I don't they didn't play great baseball this weekend. They were resilient. They had some timely hits. JT Realmuto, who's really struggled with runners in scoring position. It feels like if right now there's one guy that you don't want up in a key spot, it feels like it's JT Realmuto. He's really been an inning killer more often than not this season. He's had his little stretches that have pumped up his numbers and probably make his season look better overall than it really has been, I think. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is fair to say.
Well,
he's had 3 stretches, Bob, this season of 6 or 7 games where he's been excellent, and then the rest of the season he's been disappointing. So you really want to look at it. I mean, you say they've played what? How many games have they played now? 91, 90, whatever it is, whatever number of games. He's probably had a stretch, 3 stretches combined at probably 15 games where he's been fantastic, and the other 60, 70 games, 72 games, 75, whatever the freaking number is, he's not been good.
And he's been good defensively until he wasn't yesterday late.
Pass ball
was it was an absolute killer, or could have been a killer. But he comes up yesterday in a big spot and entering play Sunday, 182 batting average with a 573 OPS with runners in scoring position. So it was a nice moment to see him hook one down the line, give the Phillies the lead at that point. That was a big hit for him, I think. And these are the things where, again, you talk about your leaders, your big name players delivering in big spots, and you start to think to yourself, okay, maybe this gets this guy going. Maybe. So there's a lot of that. And I do want to actually talk about Trey Turner specifically, but I want to bounce around to some things I am a little bit concerned about, because it would be foolish to sit here and say, wow, this was a great weekend. A totally awesome baseball start to finish. There are some things that I'm kind of going oh boy. And some of them I don't think are quite as important as others. So in a moment, I want to talk about Darrick Hall, and I want to talk about Drew Ellis, and I want to talk about some of the pieces at the bottom of this roster, because there's some issues here. But the first thing I want to talk about is what we have kind of identified as a strength of this team all season long. I think it was last Monday, said, hey, these injuries could make things interesting with this bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
And they have made things interesting with this bullpen. Now, you get the 2 innings from Hoffman yesterday, which
was excellent. He was excellent.
He's been really good. I think it was Corey Seidman who tweeted out that he's made 5 multi-inning appearances this season, and all of them have been scoreless. And they don't win yesterday without him. There's no question about it. So there were some good things that happened in that bullpen yesterday. There's also some bad things that happened. And you're seeing here, I think, anytime you take 2 of your top relievers out of the mix for an extended period of time, there's going to be ramifications to that. And when you look at what you have in terms of remaining parts, you need those guys to step up. And right now, you look at Gregory Soto, who was given that 8th inning yesterday, and he lit it on fire. And now you look at Gregory Soto in July. He's made 4 appearances. He has a 9.82 ERA, 3 2/3 innings pitched, a ton of base runners. I mean, he's given up 7 hits. He's walked 2. It's just like, all of a sudden, are we kind of holding our breath with everybody that's not Craig Kimbrell here? Like, has the Phillies' depth and versatility and flexibility in the bullpen been reduced to hold your breath and get it to the 9th?
I mean, it's a fair point, because these guys have not been as good as they were a month ago, let's just say. But I will still take the bigger picture look and say, I think it's since April 16th, they have the best bullpen ERA in baseball by a half a run. Like, I think they're 3.16, and the next closest is San Francisco at 3.66 or something.
But I agree with that. But like, that bullpen is not the bullpen right now.
Currently, I get it. And look, you're going to get Dominguez back soon. I know he wasn't fantastic beforehand, but I mean, he changes the dynamic of who's in what role. And I do believe, Bob, and I think I said this in the last episode, I think that they're going to add there.
So do I.
At the deadline. And
I don't think Jose Alvarado is going to be back for a while. I mean, I don't. You got August 15th over under. What do you got?
September 1st is what I think.
I think they're going to keep. I don't think you'll see him in August.
I think they're going to protect him. I mean, even if he feels healthy enough, I think that it's going to be like, look, we had this issue crop up twice.
Yeah.
We want you for October. Let's get you geared up for October. And I think that that's really the plan there. So I do think you're going to see at least 1 addition, if not 2 additions to the bullpen before the deadline. So are there little concerns there? I think so. I think there's a little bit, even Strom gives up when he gave up the home run when he came, but other than that, I thought he pitched well.
Yeah.
He gives up the solo homer, but I thought he pitched well. So I think that I think that you can look at it and say maybe, but I also think that on the whole, they have enough depth to not have it become a major problem. And I think that they're going to be creative enough at the deadline to make it an even stronger unit.
Were you surprised in the 8th inning yesterday that Soto got Tatis?
Yes. They weren't ready for it.
Why wasn't
Marte?
So they were caught off guard by that San Diego even went to him, right? Like,
yep.
that was a surprise to them, because to me, like, how do you not have, like, so I'm going to write something today on the site that's basically like, maybe it's time to start giving Rob Thompson and the Phillies the benefit of the doubt. And it deals a lot with the lineup construction and the days off for different players. It's working. Like, I see fire Thompson. This guy's an idiot. That's why he's a career bench manager. I mean, people are brutal online. And I know Twitter's not the real world and all that, but like, there's a lot of negativity, I think, about some of the Phillies' decision-making. And I think it's kind of unfair, some of it, to be honest with you. But yesterday, I'm watching this game, and I thought Rob Thompson was terrible in game yesterday. I was like asleep at the wheel almost. And I've been very pro Rob Thompson. Like, I think from a cultural standpoint, the way that players respond to him, I think that what they do sometimes, it puts players in the best position to be successful long term, and you see the fruit of that in the long run. But yesterday, like, in the moment, I'm like, I don't understand anything that he's doing here. It's clear that Soto didn't have it. And I just don't know how you get caught off guard there. Like, Marte has to be up sooner so that he can get that Tatis matchup. That should not have happened yesterday.
I agree. I thought that's the one yesterday that really sticks out. Yeah, and because I do the same thing as you, Bob. I find myself at games saying to myself, I wouldn't make that decision. I wouldn't have done that. But then again, I after a day, I look back at it and, looking at it from a bigger picture at that point, I sit there and go, okay, yeah, if I was managing in a vacuum, I would have done it the way I would have done it. But
right.
Managing the way that the Phillies are looking at it from a more holistic, big picture viewpoint, they always have an eye on tomorrow.
Sure.
And sometimes we sit there and go, so you're punting, like you're just giving this game up. And they did it Friday. I mean, we talked about this, via text, and I even wrote about it, that they were punting Friday by going with, not your best guys out of the bullpen coming off of the break, and it set them up for more success Saturday and Sunday. So ultimately, they end up winning 3 out of 4. I won't say it's because of the bullpen. They hit, but at the same time, you can see why they were doing. Now you go back and look at all 4 games, you can see why they were doing it. The one exception in my head is exactly what you just said. Obviously, Soto's not on his best game. You should keep in mind, even though they said Tatis is, dealing with this injury, he's not in the lineup, whatever, you have to, in the back of your head, think if the Padres get into a position where they need a big hit or whatever, he's going to be available, especially if it's a home run. He's going to be available. You have to have somebody to face him. And
I can go for like Soto's our best arm in this spot. This is what he's the setup guy in this current construction. Had he been throwing the ball well, I could have. It's not like he mowed through the first 2 guys and then they send up Tatis to try to tie the game with one swing, and he's on point and he's dotting the corners and stuff. I mean, he didn't have it yesterday. It was a mess.
And I know you mentioned Marte, and that's who eventually came in, right? So, and that's fine. I wouldn't have had a problem if Marte was the guy who was ready to come in and whatever. But in my mind, in my head, again, this is me thinking, you have to have Kimbrel ready in that spot.
So this came up a lot, and I don't want to dismiss that because I'm sure people are listening and saying, well, really, like Marte, is that the guy that you're like, but that's what they're treating him like. I mean, he has a sub-2 ERA since he's been up here.
Right.
He's been recalled. So he's been getting these higher leverage spots and he's been pretty good in them. The thing with Kimbrel, you can tell the Phillies are deathly afraid of the up down with him. They don't want to use him across multiple innings. I mean, he didn't even throw a lot in the 9th yesterday, and they just were like, okay, thanks, Craig. We'll see you Tuesday.
Yeah.
They don't want to go with the up down with him. And it's you talk about eye on tomorrow. There's not a ton of like all in this in terms of how they utilize Craig Kimbrel. And again, he pitches Saturday, back-to-back days. And I think the back-to-back days and then the up down is what they were really like, we're just not doing it. We're not going to do it.
But to me, and this is where we have this, philosophical dilemma with baseball. If that spot calls for your best pitcher, then you go to your best pitcher and you worry about the next inning.
Right.
Like if you have to bring it, if Kimbrel comes in and gets Tatis, let's say it's Kimbrel, let's just for example, and he comes in and he faces Tatis and he gets him. And then he's done for the day. Okay, fine. Then I'm going to say, Junior, go get your second career save. Or hey, Hoffman's been throwing well. Let's have him ready to roll in the 10th or whatever the situation, or the 9th, whatever the situation might be. So I think that you in my mind, I would always default to going to the best arm in that key spot. The Phillies chose not to, and it almost cost them.
The other move that I did not understand, I mean, I do. Like, so here's the thing. You get into the 6th inning yesterday, the Phillies get on that rally, and the San Diego goes to Cosgrove, who quite literally had a meltdown. Like, I don't know if you saw him after that was weird.
Punching himself in the head, you mean?
I don't want to even make light of that. It was kind of funny when you first saw it, but I have no idea. I have no idea what the hell's going on there. So whatever. Yeah. But they get the lead and they're rolling and they go to Ellis. They let Ellis take the at bat. He walks, obviously, and I can go for that. I can go for Ellis.
He does walk a lot. The one thing about Ellis is he's got a great eye. So, I mean, I was cool with keeping Ellis in there too.
Yeah, and again, you're talking lefty righty. That all makes sense to me. You have an opportunity though, up 5-3. With Alec Boehm, your best RBI producer on the team, sitting on the bench. It's a good matchup for him. You more or less have the opportunity to deliver the knockout blow at that point. You even get the 6-3. They probably are all right. He gets a hit there, 7-3. They bust the game open, and you're home early. You're not playing the 10th, 11th, and 12th, right? But they let Darrick Hall take that at bat. And unsurprisingly, he strikes out, and he strikes out on a 2-2 pitch. It was about 4 feet off the plate. Mm-hmm. It was a horrible at bat. It was a horrible at bat, and what's been a run of horrible at bats for Darrick Hall. Are you surprised? Because I was I thought that was an opportunity to use Boehm and kind of just break the game open. And then to use them later in the game. Because I said to myself, okay, I'm not going to kill this move in the moment because clearly, obviously Bone was dinged up a little bit on Saturday night. They wanted to give him a day off. He played both games of the doubleheader. It was a hot day. It looked like there was something going on lower body late Saturday. So like, hey, we want to keep him off his feet Sunday, no problem. But then they go to him later in the game. And I'm like, well, Jesus Christ, if you were going to go to the guy, go to him.
And I think that was so I think that's the thing, Bob. And I think that the plan was let's not let either him or Castellanos have to hit at all. Just give them complete days off. And then you combine it with that spot in the lineup could come up again, and this game situation might be different. And so maybe at that point is when we're like, okay, now we're going to turn to you, Alec, right? Which is exactly what ended up happening, and that's what they did. So I'm not going to kill them as much for that. Because I mean, Darrick Hall should not be.
I'm not saying it was a fireable offense.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that, like, if you're not going to use them, then don't use them. Like that.
I understand why he doesn't use them in the sixth. Look, if it's a tie game, then I'm like, what the hell are you thinking? You got to win the game. But you just went up. You just took the lead. You're up 2 runs. You're confident in your bullpen. We're like, okay, this is still only the 6th inning. The spot could come up again. Let's still, we have the opportunity of saving Bone. Maybe he doesn't have to come in the game, or if we need him later, he's still an option for us later. So I'm okay with the decision.
Let me just flip it around. Like, let me just play devil's advocate, because I do understand what you're saying. Like, that's not an unreasonable premise, and I know that that's what they were thinking. But we talk about using your best relievers in the highest leverage spots. Like, this is an opportunity. If you think that there's a possibility that you're going to need this guy, use him in the highest leverage spot, because you end the game there.
No, I mean, I don't think your argument is faulty. It's not. It's perfectly acceptable, I think. But again, within the framework of the fact that they already had the 2-run lead.
Yeah.
If, like I said, if it was 3-3, they hadn't taken the lead, I'm like, then I'm with you. Then I'm like, oh, come on. Why is this guy even like, because I don't even think Darrick Hall belongs on the team, let alone up in a spot with the bases loaded and a chance to put the game away. Right. But I think once they took the lead, I think that gives them the leeway a little bit to not pinch hit for him in the 6th inning.
Well, as is often the case, managerial decisions get picked apart and tweaked apart because something wrong or something went wrong, something bad happened. And the reason something bad happened is because Darrick Hall right now is just he's not a Major League Baseball player. Now, I'm not telling you that this is what it is with him, that he can't be productive, that he may ultimately not be, it could work out. I just right now, though, where this team's at, I just don't see the fit here. It makes no sense to me. Bryce Harper will play first base at some point. That's the way this has been reported. He will play first base at some point this week. And once he does that, Darrick Hall cannot be up here anymore. I mean, his at-bats have just been god awful. And I know sometimes it takes guys a little bit of time. I'm sure that he's feeling a lot of pressure. He probably knows that he's got to do it right now. There's only a limited opportunity here, pressing, all of that stuff. But I mean, he's hitting 174 right now with a 208 on base percentage. He's utterly, you could put a scarecrow in the left-handed batter's box against a left-handed pitcher and have a better chance of getting on base right now, because maybe he'll get hit or not swing the bat and chase something out of the zone. I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but like, he can't hit lefties. So what are they doing here? Because then you look down, you're like, oh, Cody Clemens was so good for them, or, he was a contributor and at least he can play defense, because Darrick Hall's defense has been just terrible.
Yeah. 2 errors. On easy ground balls.
Routine plays. But then you look and you're like, oh, Cody Clemens is hitting 260 with Lehigh and has a 600 OPS. Like, that's not exactly lighting the world on fire. Jake Cave continues to hit. Like, what are they going to do here? Because right now I can make an argument that there are 3 guys on the Lehigh Valley roster that might be better options than what they have up here between Drew Ellis almost ending Zach Wheeler's season yesterday on that.
Yep.
On that bump pop-up. And Darrick Hall. I mean, they've got some work to do at the bottom of this roster.
And I think that that's also going to be something that's addressed at the trade deadline as well. But I think with the short-term solution, at least until the deadline, and see what happens, is you replace Hall with Cave. I think that's what you do. Cave deserves the call up after the season he's had at Lehigh Valley. And I know you sit there and say, well, that's yet another outfielder. But I'd rather him as your left-handed pinch hit option than Darrick Hall. And if you're going to play Harper at first, and I know Thompson said they're not going to play him there every day. He's going to DH. He says we're probably going to start slow, where it's going to be he plays and then he DHs the next game, and then the next time out he'll play 2 in a row and then he DHs again. Yeah. So like they're not going to automatically, play Harper at first base every game, but I don't think it's long before you get to that point where he's the regular first baseman. So if I'm looking at this Brewers series, when he said that that's when he's going to make an appearance, I have a feeling that the Wednesday night game is the night Bryce Harper plays first base. Left-handed pitcher on the mound, so you can put Rojas in center field, feel comfortable with him playing against a lefty. And you probably are okay with Marsh on one of the corners and Schwarber at DH. Harper plays first base that game. And then I think the 2 other games against the Brewers, you're probably sticking with Harper in the DH spot. But I get Jake Cave in there. I just do. I just get him up here. Maybe he plays. Maybe he plays one of the games. You give somebody a rest. I don't know. He's got to be up here at the very least to improve the bench possibilities. I'm
with you. And are we not the worst? 40 minutes into the show, I think that's the first time we said the name Johan Rojas, and he was the story of the day on Saturday.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. Saturday was the coolest thing ever, man, with him.
Yeah. Talk about a first impression right off the bat.
Yeah.
To the fence, turn, spin, throw, and then 3 hits in the game Saturday night too. So it was a really impressive debut from him. I don't know what he is. I think he's probably what you saw in the weekend entirety, like not a great bat that's like super major league ready at the moment, but just from an athletic standpoint, from the defensive standpoint, energy, like what a nice ad, because even if he doesn't hit to the degree that you would love to see, there's a lot of things that he can do to help you win games. Gets a bunt down yesterday that helps them win the game. Like he's a guy that they have. This team, I think at times can look a little bit lethargic, a little bit sleepy, a little bit old, I think is fair to say.
Yeah.
And kind of getting that infusion of somebody that can come in and have superior athleticism and a little electricity, I think is a really good compliment to what they have right now.
Yeah. And, I did this story about him, relating it to Castellanos. And it's funny because I remember when I was down in spring training, and this is what the whole genesis of the story was. I remember there was a day that I was waiting to talk to Nick in spring training. I was working on that spring training story on him about, how he had changed his approach in the offseason and everything was going to be different this year. And while I'm sitting there waiting, it's like it was Nick and Rojas. And that was the conversation that was going on in the clubhouse for 30 minutes, like no one else around, just the 2 of them, and Rojas sitting there like a little kid, right, with cross-legged on the floor and just picking Castellanos' brain. And it was all baseball. Like, it was all like, I didn't hear the entirety of the conversation, but everything was about baseball. It wasn't just like some BS conversation. It was Rojas was really trying to take all this stuff in because he wanted to try and make it to the majors. And then of course he gets up here and Nick's next to him in the outfield and he makes that great play and Nick gives him the big hug and, smacks him in the chest. But so I went over to Castellanos afterwards just to do that little one-on-one to get a couple quotes for that story. And one of the questions I asked him, which I did not include this quote, just because it didn't fit the story so much, but it's exactly what you just said. I said, does a kid who has that kind of exuberance and excitement and, just love of the sport when they come in and perform, does that kind of lift a locker room? Does that change spirits a little bit? And he said, in most cases it does. He said, your question is not off base. He says, it absolutely does. He said, the only thing I would say is that with this team, we go about things in such a way that we're never down. Like,
right.
We might get frustrated at times, whatever. But we never are like, man, we missed that spark in this clubhouse. We just know how to go as a veteran team. He said, don't take that as it doesn't help us to have a kid like this come in. This is great. It's a great thing to add into the mixture. So yeah, that was a really cool thing. And the only thing, Bob, is that I think that he's here, and I mean, obviously he's here to replace Pache, who's got that getting the screw removed today from his elbow. I do think he'll be back by September as well. But at the same time, I also think Rojas is here to show other teams that he can play in the majors and potentially be part of a trade deadline.
Yeah.
Part of the
trade I don't deadline. Know that that's absolutely what's going to happen here, but I do think that there's a secondary benefit to this where it's like, hey, yeah, I mean, he can help us right now, but also we have a lot of, as we said last week, there's 4 of their top 10 prospects right now are outfielders. You had mentioned that they had invested quite a bit of draft capital this past year, last week, in adding outfielders to the mix. So, yeah, I mean, I think that that's certainly still on the table if a team likes him enough and they get a meaningful piece in return. There's no question. Now, I know we're a little short on time here. I do want to hit you with 2 quick little things. Just one, impression of Trey Turner this week, and I know he started the series on Friday night 0 for 5, and it was kind of the same old stuff. Brutal play early in the game on Saturday, cost the Phillies 3 runs. If I were Ranger Suarez, I would not have been really thrilled about that. Cost him 3 earned runs to his line, at least for now. But then he bounces back, does some things late in the game on Saturday. Big hit in the first game, contributes Saturday night. Decent game yesterday. Nice play late defensively. I would love to tell you, okay, that was a great first step for Trey Turner in the second half to turning things around. But we've been here before with him where some good happens and you think that he's going to sustain it and then it doesn't happen. But anything else on Trey Turner?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to take. I mean, he said in the story, I don't know if you read Scott Lauber's story over the weekend, where he basically said baseball's kicking his ass right now, and he's having a hard time figuring it out at the moment. So if that's the case, and then he comes out and has a weekend where, I think he reached base 8 times total in the 3 games, Saturday and Sunday. And like you said, he may not. I mean, he had that goofy defensive play where he flipped the ball behind his back for some unknown reason. He also got picked off of first base.
Yeah.
But he did steal 3 more bases this week, right? So there was some good and some bad, but I'll take the good. Yeah. I'll take the good. I think he made some good plays in the field. Like you said, you mentioned that when we infield in, catching that line drive to hold the runner at third, you get on base 8 times in 3 games. That's important, and so you got to hope that keeps going in that direction. Look, I don't need Trey Turner to be at this point. I mean, he doesn't have to just suddenly find the MVP form that we thought he was going to have coming into the season. But if Trey Turner can be better than he was in the first half, get on base, make things happen, and just be a catalyst more than anything else, that will just benefit the Phillies. He doesn't need to be a superstar. He can be. Go right ahead, Trey. You want to be a superstar, be a superstar. But I think that as long as he's just a catalyst at the top of the lineup and creating havoc when he's on base, I'm good with it at this point.
And I don't want to end on a sour note, but it kind of got lost in here a little bit. Nick Castellanos this weekend was 1 for 16. He was 0 for 10 on Saturday. I mean, that's a tough day.
4 for his last 41.
I actually have it up here right now. You go back to July 4th. He came into July 4th hitting 316, and now he's down to 291. He's 4 for his last 41, 16 strikeouts. He's only walked 1 time in that time. He has 1 extra base hit. It was a homer. He's hitting 098. 119 on base percentage, 290 OPS. Hits into a double play yesterday in a situation against a lefty where he felt like maybe he was going to win the game essentially. And he rolls into that double play. I'm not going to sit here and say after 2 bad weeks that we need to be overly concerned about Nick Castellanos, but it's not great at the moment. And do you have any additional thoughts on him?
I think if there was anybody who needed a break, it was Nick. I mean, he's played the only games he had missed up until yesterday were the 2 games he was sick in Oakland. I mean, other than that, he's played every game of the season and almost every inning of every game of the season.
Yeah, Schwarber and Turner, I believe, are the only 2 players that have appeared in more games than Castellanos this season. And I mean, because they basically have been in every game.
Right. And so, and again, that was only because he got sick. Otherwise, he would have played those games in Oakland as well. And I've looked at the count, and after Saturday, and I had written it after the game Saturday night, and then of course it happened because I wasn't sure if it was going to happen yesterday or the first game of the Brewers series. I didn't know how the Phillies were going to play it, but that having the off day, giving Nick 2 days off in a row. Remember, he went to the All-Star game, so he had to fly all the way to Seattle, fly all the way back. So he didn't really have a break like everyone else did.
Flew to Seattle from Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, like people don't I think people discount the significance of that and the toll of that. And I'm not going to make excuses for him, but I love that they gave him the day off yesterday, or tried to anyway.
Yeah.
2 days. Here's the other half of the break you didn't get. We'll see you Tuesday.
Yeah. And so I'm okay with it. I mean, I don't think this is something that's going to become chronic. I think Nick will get out of it. But yes, it has been a tough couple weeks for Nick.
All right, you have one last thing, or do you?
I do one real quick because I know I do. We have to wrap it up. So I don't know if you saw yesterday before the game, the Padres recalled this kid Matt Waldron. Okay, Matt Waldron is a knuckleball pitcher. So Bob, I got to ask your opinion on this, because I think I'm starting to see a little bit of a course correction, just a little bit. And I don't want to go completely this way, but looking around baseball, I'm starting to see it a little bit. Are we starting to get back towards things that used to be more regular in baseball? And what I mean by that is starting pitchers are now going a little bit longer, because they figured it out. I mean, I forget who did the chart, and I wanted to have this ready and I forgot to look it up, but I did see somebody put out a chart that since starting pitching innings have gone down and bullpen usage has gone up, that the ERAs have matched or like basically flatlined. So that it's like, why are we doing this? So starting pitchers maybe being used a little bit more. Maybe you don't have to have 13 pitchers who throw 97 miles per hour on your roster anymore. Obviously, the stolen bases are up this year. That has more to do with the rule change that you can't hold runners like you used to be able to hold them. And the shifting has helped that, I think, a little bit. You don't have a guy right behind second base, a little, to even cut down even more on that time. But are we starting to go back a little bit now to things from the past, or at least being willing to try them again and not being stuck completely in the analytical world of baseball?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that we're there yet. Teams are still prioritizing velocity. You look at the draft, this past draft, it's like hard. You're not going to get drafted as a guy that's throwing 87 miles an hour and has pinpoint command. It's just not where the game is right now. But could we ultimately see that? And are we starting to see some signals perhaps that could indicate it? Maybe. And I kind of equate it to what you see in the NFL. It becomes a pass-oriented league, and still certainly a pass-oriented league. We're not reverting back to the 1980s here, but teams will kind of use that to their advantage to say, okay, you have dime personnel on the field. You have one linebacker out there. We're going to run the ball at you, right? Like, and you do kind of say, like, if everyone's throwing 97, everyone's throwing 98, what happens when we kind of, zag on the zig, so to speak, and now we're going to throw a knuckleball at you. Now we're going to throw a guy that has a different look. I think that there is probably some value in that, and you might see some teams implement that. And yeah, I think that there is probably something to that.
And the Padres also had that lefty Hill, right, who came in, who throws those frisbees, sidearm, almost submarine, left-handed. But I mean, I'm saying, like, that's another kind of thing that was kind of a lost art in baseball, that all of a sudden you know a couple more guys that are doing that, and then even the Phillies this weekend bunting a lot, right? I mean, sacrificing runners over and try. So, like, there's things that you start to see a little bit more of. I'm not saying that it's going to come back in full time and we're going to be reverted back to the 70s and 80s, but I like the fact that teams are willing to take a step back and say, hey, maybe we were a little bit wrong about this. Maybe there is some value to these things every once in a while that's not bad, and it can add back to the sport. It makes me happy.
Double one last thing. Worst umpiring I've seen behind the plate from start to finish in a series ever. And if the Phillies would have lost that series, we probably would have led with this. I've never seen anything. I've seen bad games. I've never seen 4 bad games stacked on top of one another like we did this weekend. God awful. Worst crew I've ever seen in my life.
Phil Cuzzy on Friday. It was a Friday, or was the first game? Yeah. The first game Saturday. I think his percentage, if they put the thing out, like he had 9 missed pitches in the 9th inning alone.
It was horrible. It was unbelievably bad.
How do you miss 9 pitches in 1 inning? And I know, look, it's hot out there. It's brutal.
I
Right?
don't want to hear that. Get it right.
But here's the thing, and it's Bob, we've said this before. They have too much responsibility with the pitch clock.
I know.
Somebody else has to run the pitch clock. It cannot be the home plate umpire because it's causing this. This is a causation thing from adding that. So anyway.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon.
Did I get it right there? Did I get it right?
Yeah, we're back. That's the right one. Nice. So make sure that you're following us on Twitter at Phillies, at AnSamPhilly, at Bob_Wankel. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Friday, and we will talk to you soon.